Now we have a talk of Leon. I'm very happy to see you again. Also after some years, I remember a great keynote that you gave some years ago in a very good conference in Nijmegen. And so I'm very happy to have you again back in ISAGA, and I really look forward to your keynote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Willy. Good morning, everybody. After the Brazilian disaster, we have to figure out what the Netherlands is going to do tonight, but I can say you the Netherlands camp is optimistic. So I'm a little bit an outsider. I worked with gaming very intensively together with Dick Duke and with Ivo Wensler and with Chuck Kurtz. But for me, it's a while ago, and I came to gaming as a consultant. So I'm not, you know, as people might say, they say I'm a gamer, but actually my expertise and my domain is change. So I work for companies and organizations who want to change, and I help them. And sometimes I help them with gaming or using gaming methodologies. So that's the perspective from where I will present this morning. And as a consultant, you could say I'm an organization development person. So I help organizations to become better, to better in terms of functioning in their processes, in cooperation and whatever. And my background is a social scientist, and social science is a very complicated science because, as you know, the people from sometimes I look for an English word and I can't find it, and Jacques promised me to help me if I couldn't. Natuurkunde? The physics science, they study Higgs parts, you know? And if you explain to other people how Higgs parts work, they're very, very complicated. As you compare that with social science, we study Higgs parts also. But then the Higgs parts itself, they think themselves also, you know. And they act themselves and they do whatever they like. And that's the, you know, the complicated part of social science for me. Okay. So I'm a management consultant for almost 40 years. I did something like 1,200 assignments for all kind of companies. I work for Twijnstra Gudde, which is it's a local company, but for the Netherlands, it's a big company. It's one of the biggest in the country. And I'm 15 years professor at the University of Amsterdam. And gaming, as I told you, was one of my favorite interventions. And I wrote my dissertations long ago on the effects of gaming, in which I studied a particular game that we played 142 times. And I had a huge amount of qualitative and quantitative data, and I did a robust evaluation of the effects of gaming, in which I'm going to be back later on in my lecture. And I said my interest came from the change perspective. So how can games help people to change, or help groups or organizations to change? What I prepared in my presentations is something about the type of simulations that I developed and used, and I learned something already these days here, because I'll come back to that later. I will tell something about the themes in the game, so where were the games about? Because I use games for solving management, organization, change type of questions, you know. And then I have 8 arguments from the perspective of change for using games. So 8 arguments why games can do something for change that works. And that is, as I said, I do it from the science of change. I will present some research on effects of gaming. So what does it do with people? And I have some concluding remarks. Also something about don't use games when, something like that, because I am in a group of believers And it's not bad to have some critics on your own methodology, probably. So what I learned in yesterday when I was here is that I use analog games. I wasn't aware that I used analog games. I thought I used games, but they seem to be analog. And they seem to be serious, which was self-evident for me also, that they were serious. Of course they're serious. And they do something for learning. So the aim of the use of gaming is for learning. Not, for instance, for... I saw a lot of games who do marketing, or of spread information or whatever. But I use it for people to learn about their own behaviors, the group behavior, for organizations, etc. So, and serious and analog. And the games that I used and that I developed are very low on the cone of abstraction. So when we made for Albert Heijn, a retail organization in the Netherlands, when we made the game, then actually we made a shop, with cheese in it and lockers and something that leads the process and customers that's coming in, etc., etc. It's also rich simulation. So I like to have a lot of detail in the simulation as a means of avoiding that people would say something like, that's not about my work, or this is not about my organization. So we had the aim to make it very recognizable for everybody. When you come in, then you see, this is my daily work, right? It's, of course, about organization, management, and change, and of course, cooperation, etc., etc., about work, about decisions, and mostly in functional teams or groups. So the favorite way of playing a game is in your own group. So with your own people from your own shop, of course, you go to an off-site place, but you go with your own people and do a complex group task, you could say. To do it in functional teams is the advantage of it is that the transfer of training, the transfer of what you learn in the setting, in the seminar, is fairly easy because you do all the things that you do in cooperation and you can take it home with you as learning effects. Something like groups of 12 to 18 people. And that number comes from the science of learning. That if you want groups to learn, then that is a sort of an optimal size for debriefing and for collective learning. Never used computers, except for calculation. When we had a computer, we had it in the room of the game facilitator, just for putting in some data and then and calculating and giving some effects back. But actually, if you went into the room, again the example of the retail, you thought you were in a shop, right? And so very real life like. The typical way of doing a game was with 3 or 6 runs of the Kolb cycle. I will talk about the Kolb cycle just in a minute, but it's the learning cycle. Then you go through an experience, reflect upon it, then go concept formation, and then new action. And going 3 to 6 times through the cycle is something like repeating. And from the change perspective, we know that repeating is very important for learning. And what typically happens also is that after the first cycle, people learn the game, learn to play it. But after the second cycle, they say, well, I know how it works, until they have to act in it, which is in the third cycle. And then you see what we know from change theory is when change is in the head of a person, it's not in his hands, right? So it takes 2 or 3 cycles again to make it work in terms of doing it. So the cognitive change, you could say, the change of the mindset, it's much easier and comes earlier than the change in behavior, and actual acting. The games last for 1 to 4 days, and mostly it's about 2 days, including the evening. So we have 5 half days, you could say, for a game run. Some introduction, and then something like 3, 4, 5 cold cycles, and then a large debriefing session afterwards. We use it for 3 reasons. I used it for 3 reasons. The first is policy development. When there is no policy and you want to develop it in an experimental and experience-based way, then it's for policy development. The second one is for implementation. Then you know already what you want to change, but you want to learn to people and to groups how it's going to work. And then it's for learning to act in accordance with the change. And the third one is to improve the collective competences of people. So as a means of developing, the learning in a certain group, and to raise the level of competence in how our system, our group is working, and how can we do better. And it's embedded, of course, in a change program. So Jacques like to call it a microcosmos. So the type of game that I work for is that if we work for a retail organization, then we have the small shop and do everything in the small shop in say like 15 people. The same for a big ministry, condense it to a microcosmos and have, 15 people simulate the whole ministry, including its ecology and its surroundings, etc. And Dick calls it the structured learning experience. I can agree with that. It's structured. Or laboratories for change. That Ivo used that term. That would be also a nice word for it. And it's always in one room. That's my belief also. To have it in one room. And there was someone talking yesterday about black boxes and white boxes. And the metaphor of the white box appealed to me, because what we actually do is make everything visible, right? Everything is there, and if you want to learn, every mechanism, every variable, everything that happens is there. And nothing in the computer, nothing hidden, nothing in a black box. So that's, I think, it's an important aspect. And it's actually, if you look from it from a modest side, you could say we give a very complex task to a group. That's it. And what you have to do with 12 or 15 people is to do it together, right? And then organization comes in, because then you have things like leadership, communication, strategy, layers, preferences, and whatever, everything that is normal in a normal situation. Then is this clear? So far, the themes that were in my games, in the things that we used for management and change, I think they reflect the time that we live in, the era between 1990, you could say, and 2010. And there were things like some flows and some pendulum between centralization and decentralization. I did games for centralizing organization, and I did games for decentralizing and creating more autonomy, within units of organizations. There's something like another theme was integrated management, like result steering, contracts, management by contracts, and management reporting, as aspects of learning in the game. A third one is logistic change, working in change, cooperation in networks, and games. They like the traditional beer game. They show you how a chain might work and what the effects of change are. Something like network steering, flexible organizing, surviving in your ecology, you could say, as an organization, expanding your strategies and your repertoire. And I did games for business process re-engineering, a lot of them, but also to shared service centers, which was the hype, say, something like 10 years ago. Okay. And of course, I forgot them, self-steering teams, it's so that the people take more initiative, have more autonomy. Multifunctional teams, experience-based learning, effective decision-making, and system thinking. I think it's interesting to note this for the history, because maybe the coming 20 years may be different points on the agenda of management and organization and change might be. But this is the reflection of the work of my, say, last 25 years. And system thinking, an important thing of it is that it creates organization awareness, which I like a lot in games, because it does not only show you your own role and how to optimize your own role, but it shows you how you can collectively optimize the whole system to play your role in the system and have the system, playing better. And that's something which is, I would say, second-order learning and very important. And I think games are capable of doing that. I will summarize 8 arguments for why are games so good for change. First and most important, in my view, is that it couples thinking and doing. So what we do in organizations in normal life is to separate thinking and doing. So the thinking is in the meetings and in the plans and in whatever, and the doing is in daily life. And what typically a game can do is to couple thinking and doing. And I have a lot of examples that, in the debriefing, people would say, well, we should do this or this or this, and then we will improve. And then I can say to them, well, do it. Do it in the next round, the next cycle, and see what happens. That's a very important aspect of gaming. And of course, it's the theory behind it is the loosely coupled systems theory of Caluwe, who says that thinking and doing are very loosely coupled, and games can help us to couple it a little bit. But also the Argyris espoused theory and theory and action, the difference between it, what people say that they do and what they actually do. We can solve it with gaming, or cognitive dissonance, and here I have the learning cycle. But I think that everybody of you knows this learning cycle. And typically the game design that I use is we have something like 30 minutes or 45 minutes experience, and then 45 minutes reflection on it, the debriefing, and then find some ways to improve the system, and then do it again, And a typically game run is going through this cycle, as I said, 3, 4, 5 times. And the repetition of the cycle, I think it's very important. So an important insight also from the change theory is, if you want to learn about change, try to change something, right? And a game is actually something, an uitnodiging, an invitation, to do it, to change it, and that's one of the important aspects. That's for argument 1. The second one is what I would call consciously incompetent. So what happened is, when I ask people before they start playing a game, how well they are doing in their group, in general they would say, well, we have some problems, but in generally it's okay, and okay, our objectives are quite clear, and we cooperate fairly good, and we communicate fairly good, and we accept our leader. Something like that they would say when I asked them in a questionnaire. And after a game, their reflection upon it is very different. They would say something like, we have to learn a lot about communication. And our leader didn't do not everything very well, etc., etc. And that is what I call consciously incompetent. And this gives people motivation to learn and to change, because after a game, this feeling of being not competent, is strengthened, and it motivates them to do something about it, like some training, or some reading, or talk about it with the team and whatever. It works. This works. This mechanism works for individuals and for groups, and people are inclined to ask for help afterwards. And that's from a change perspective, that's a very strong point. because people don't ask for help to help them change. But afterwards, when they have this feeling, that might be the case. And this is from Hershey and Blanchard. Maybe it's a very well-known theory. So that's the second argument. The third is something about sense-making and verbalization. People are open for information, but they are closed for sense-making. So people let information come through, but the sense-making is, they produce sense-making themselves. It's nothing from outside. And one of the interesting examples of sense-making is the introduction of the euro. It's probably this for my European friends. You know, when we introduced the euro in 2002, I believe, then if you saw something and it set the price on it, then we have to recalculate it in your original